All right. Without further ado, I want to bring in our guest for the show today, Rocky Rochford, 33-year military veteran. He ran for District 14 here in Florida for the U.S. congressional seat, and he was knocked out, but not because he wasn't worthy and not because he didn't win. Yeah, that's right. Voter fraud got him. Rocky, it's great to have you back on the show. Thanks so much for coming today. You bring some receipts, and I'm looking forward to having you explain to our audience here exactly how they stole the election, because I think what they did to you, they probably deployed this around the country and other similar down ballot elections.
Yeah, well, we do believe that. My attorney is Peter Tickton, who was roommates with President Trump at the New York Military Academy way back when, and he is ecstatic with what we have uncovered and what his team has uncovered. There were so in essence there were two different types of fraud that were perpetrated against the voters here in Florida. One of those was, so when you register to vote by mail ballot, you're required to provide either the Florida driver's license number. If you don't have a driver's license, you can provide your Florida ID or the last four of your social security number. If you don't provide either one of those, you're not allowed by law to be issued a ballot.
Right.
Now, let me tell you that in the election, across the election, we have discovered that there were 592,000 ballots issued that did not provide any identification. That's the number one up there on the screen right now. Of those 592,000, 475,000 of them were returned, completed, and counted.
Can I ask you something? Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Of those 475,000 returned as voting, was there any handwriting? Was there similar handwriting? Was it just boxes they checked? What did that look like in terms of those votes cast on those ballots where they didn't provide any sort of identification in order to get them sent out?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to be able to do this. I mean, you're talking about a very small team of folks. The guy who uncovered this is a DOD auditor, certified DOD auditor, and what a brilliant guy, John Siamas, and he was the one who found this. But we don't know. We haven't been able to do that. What we've identified as clearly this was fraud. And if you think that this was somehow a mistake, look at the next two lines. So on one day, September the 9th in Pinellas County, there were a total of 195,286 no ballots requested. No ballots are the ballots where you didn't provide any identification. And 160,000 of those were cast and counted. Then below that, 4 days later, on September 13th, I know it says the 9th there, but it's September 13th in Miami-Dade County, there were 242,000. These are all on one day. Mm-hmm. If you could punch forward to the next slide, you'll see what it looks like across the entire election for how many votes by mail ballots were requested. There it is. And you can see those 2 days, September 9th and September 13th. Those were two anomalies. Now, how did those anomalies occur? I mean, the Pinellas County can't process that many votes on one day. So clearly this is a data dump.
Well, let me ask you something. So let's be let's break it down to a granular level here. What we're looking at, if you start over here on the left side of the screen and you go across our blue and get red dotted lines, that is sort of an average number of voter absentee ballots that are requested per day. And then what you're showing over here with these big lines is all of a sudden they had massive requests on one day and there's no way to process it. Is that because everything has to be done hand-fed through a machine? What does that mean when you say you couldn't process 196,000 ballots in one day?
Well, so there's multiple ways to request an absentee ballot. You can do it by mail, you can do it by electronically online, or you can do it by telephone. Or I guess you could do it in person as well. So what you're looking at is the bottom of this chart shows the date. And even though it looks like there are very few mountains along there, they're very small because they're the numbers that are so big on the 9th and the 13th. These are right. This entire chart are all requests that are illegal ballots. Every one of these requests on this chart did not provide any identification to get a ballot, and it was in most cases counted.
Wow. That's pretty shocking. I mean, to see this, just to see it, in this form is it's pretty raw data.
So,
Access to the Florida statewide vote by mail and early voting list. Walk us through this.
so this is just to show that the data that we used for this was not our data. We didn't manipulate it. We didn't. So this is a state of Florida maintains a report every Monday throughout the election. Every county supervisor of elections submits an update to the vote by mail ballot requests, and it's a big database. So being a member of running for office, I'm entitled to download a copy of that file. So we downloaded that file, didn't do anything to it, just sorted it, because the last two columns in that file are, did they provide driver's license or social security number? And if there's an N and an N, no, then not supposed to provide that. As a matter of fact, there is a system that every supervisor of elections in Florida has that is designed to prevent this from happening and to prevent the 15 people that live in the same apartment from ordering ballots. And so the system is just, but the problem with that system is that it has an on/off switch. They can turn it off. And so it was clearly circumvented. And so we are, so that's the first type of fraud. That this is only the one of two. Actually, there's more, but we're only talking about two. So the second one is, this goes into the voter rolls, right? These are the databases maintained by the state that says who you are when you're registered to vote. Not that you requested a vote by mail ballot. That's a different report. This is the voter rolls. So what somebody on Peter Tickton's team was able to do was he created an algorithm that will go through the voter rolls and identify which people are cloned. So what does that mean? That means they took Anne Vandersteel, they duplicated you in the voter rolls, but they changed something. There's some minor change to the data, whether it be the actual day of your birth or the whatever. They changed something, right? And then it's attached. There's code attached to it so it can be hidden. And the code that was hiding those clones is NSA level encryption. But this guy was able to work right around it, and he figured out exactly how to find all of those. So there's an estimate that in the state of Florida, there are over 2 million cloned voters stuck in the rolls, and they're turned on. So what they do is they go in and they tell the code, turn on and vote for whoever.
Right.
Then, as soon as the vote's done, they turn you back off again. You're cloned on back off. And we've seen as many clones as you were cloned up to maybe even 9 times.
So this makes it difficult. In other words, after the election's over, you go and look at the voter rolls, you think everything looks fine. But it's not fine because they've basically hidden the clones, essentially. Right. Now, I was speaking with a lady, Candace Rojas, this morning. She's part of a group of women that are down in Palm Beach County that have been incredibly diligent. Let me just tell you how diligent they've been. They actually have a group of women for the past 4 years that literally take a shift 24 hours around the clock, and they sit in front of that supervisor of elections office website from Wendy Sartori Link's website down at the SOE in Palm Beach County, who's completely corrupt. And they screenshot every 10 minutes that website, and they can show data anomalies for the past 4 years in terms of voter registrations, as well as, any kind of, races, ballots, absentee ballots, et cetera, that where they've been moving the numbers around. Right. But when they do FOIAs or public records requests, as they have done a lot of the data, they can't seem to really get. They have a lot of data they can't get access to. Again, they're not being forthcoming with the information. So I believe that there's probably a lot of similarities and patterns and what is going on with what happened with you as what's happened here. The other curious fact, and I don't know if you all are aware of this, but the Republican Executive Committee, the Democrat Executive Committees, which exist in all 67 counties, have to submit their reports to their local supervisor of elections offices quarterly. But if you have a PAC in Florida, you have to submit your financial reports monthly to the Division of Elections at the state. Now, why is there a difference? Does that not seem a little bit, should we say, conflict of interest? It's like a conflict of interest if you have executive committees sending information to the SOE versus to the state, but yet the PACs all have to go to the state. There's just something that doesn't make sense there. So
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And there are many anomalies like that are out there. The numbers, when you talk about the number of clones, is enough to have thrown off balance all of these elections. They estimate that this cloning dates back to 2004. Yeah, let that sink into your listeners. 2004. I mean, they've gone in and looked at the numbers, and they think that about half of the Democrats who are in the U.S. House right now wouldn't be there without the cloning.
I believe it. I believe California's red too. I just believe that they're so completely corrupt and their systems are so owned that they mask it all. I mean, listen, Democrats are happy to protest and do all that. And if they really love their candidate, they show up. But you never see any Democrats show up the way that Trump supporters do. It's just unprecedented. It's not even comparable. There's just, you cannot say they're the same in terms of the popularity for the candidate. So I think the presidential election was very, very clear on that. But the down ballot stuff makes no sense because when somebody votes R at the top of the ticket, they typically flip levers all the way down in the R column. It's very rare.
Most Republicans don't split ballot. If they run into an election where they know the Republican, they don't want to vote for them, they don't vote in that election.
They just don't vote. They don't vote for a candidate in that space. You're exactly right. Worst case is they might jump ship and go to the Libertarian Party, but they're certainly really not going to go Democrat. That's just really, really rare. But we saw this happen all over the place, which is really unusual. Okay, so you've escalated this. Since I've known you, I was interviewing you prior to the election. We were hopeful that you would win. They obviously pulled some shenanigans, as we just showed the evidence of. Where has this been escalated, and what are your expectations?
All right, so we're running on 3 prongs. The first prong is that we filed a lawsuit with the state of Florida, and it's up at the Second Judicial Court up in Leon County, because District 14 crosses across 2 counties. Therefore, you can't file in one of those counties, so you have to go all the way up to Tallahassee to do that. So that lawsuit is up there. We have not been thrown out. Most lawsuits, I think all of them, have been thrown out to date. But we are the one who has not been thrown out. So Peter Tickton has modified our filing, and it's. I will tell you this: it's brilliant what he wrote, and what we're after is because this is an important distinction: is the state of Florida cannot overturn a U.S. House election. The only people who can control that election is the U.S. House. It's written into the Constitution, and it's called the Federal Contested Elections Act. And that act allows then only the House to undo. So we have, that's the second prong, is that we have a package up with them, and what they're doing is they've moved it into the committee for the administrative committee of the House, and that committee consists of 7 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and they will conduct their own investigation. And we have a lot of support that's come from folks like Rick Scott and obviously from Peter Tickton, talking to a lot of folks, and we see a lot of support happening. So they're going to investigate, then they'll come up with how they want to fix it. So what are the options? Remove Kathy Castor from office and put me rightfully in the seat that I won. Because when you look at the numbers, I clearly stepped out above Castor. I won anywhere between 10,000 and 100,000 votes. So that's one outcome, and that's the one that I'm.
You won between 10,000 and 100,000 votes in total? So you don't know exactly if you had 10,000, 20,000, or 100,000 votes?
We don't know, because once you separate the ballot from the envelope, you don't know who voted it or who they voted for. But you can look at statistics like what you were talking about, down ballot voting. When you look at how strong red Hillsborough County was and Pinellas County is, there's no reason that wouldn't have happened. The numbers are statistically impossible.
Impossible. Okay, tell
So
us about Rick Scott.
So Rick is I tell you what a fantastic guy this is, and I was really hoping that he would become the president of the Senate, and I think that opportunity still exists down the road for him, but by all means. But he's been in my corner. He's been helping me along. His advice was, clearly stick with the facts and don't overstate your evidence. And that was just brilliant advice. And so he sent a letter or sent a note to several folks in that committee saying, hey, let's make sure that this gets the attention that it needs to ensure that that you're going to that we're going to get the right outcome. And that's what we're after. But so the state of Florida, remember that case, the outcome from that is what's going to help President Trump. Because if the judge says she admits that there was fraud and puts it on the record, then that gives President Trump the ammunition to be able to go after all the state's voter rolls, to wipe them clean and start over, because they're all a disaster with all those hidden codes throughout them. They're a disaster.
Wow. I got to tell you, Rocky, part of my hope is that we're going to be looking at the election maladministration, the malfeasance, really. When you have maladministration, it means you did not run the election in your state to the state, or should we say statutory law for that state. In other words, every state has their own statutory election laws. They have to follow them by the book. Chain of custody is probably the most important one in my humble estimation, because you need to know how many people walked into the precinct, how many people voted. You need to match them up, and you need to make sure that every ballot is accounted for. So when you walk in, we know that we have on the other end a ballot that at least matches the amount of people that walked in that precinct. And we don't have that in a lot of places. And, that is one of the gripes that I know is coming out here in Palm Beach County. I imagine it's very similar to you. You just showed staggering, unrealistic numbers for absentee ballot requests on 2 dates in September, the 9th and the 13th, which makes zero sense in terms of the track record of absentee ballot requests in the history of the state of Florida, particularly in your county. It's just so much clear evidence of fraud. Now it comes incumbent on, do we have judiciary that's going to take this seriously? Clearly, we have the congressional house on your side. It's going there, and you've got a strong stalwart with Rick Scott. But at some point, somebody's going to have to put on, as they say, a pair of big balls, to coin a phrase right out of Doge, and do something. Yes.
No, I love it.
Do you think we have it this time, Rocky?
Well, I have faith. I have faith in Speaker Johnson. I have faith in a lot of the folks who are on that committee, and I have a lot of faith in the Republicans in the House. So they're going to come up with a decision. The committee is going to make a recommendation to the Speaker. He's going to put it before the entire House, and it's a simple majority vote. So what is that vote going to be? When I talk to Peter Tickton and I say, well, do you think they'll do a special election? He says, based on what? He says, you do a special election when there's a question mark about the number of ballots and how they were counted. But you can't count terrible ballots again. You're just going to end up with the same result again until you fix the system. So he thinks that the only way out of this is that they remove her from office and rightfully give me the seat.
Wow. Well, you know what? Again, it goes back to what I posted at the beginning of the show. There's got to be some arrests, and I would not be opposed to seeing Lindsey Graham arrested, or Chuck Schumer arrested, or any number of these old creatures that have just been, Pelosi, all these people who've just been plaguing and profiting off of the American taxpayer. and frankly not following the constitutional law, but living along their legislative democracy up there in DC with their US codes, which have nothing to do with you and me out here in the field and in Republic of America land, but it has everything to do with how they're supposed to be governed themselves. They don't follow their own damn rules, and neither do the people that are supposed to be governing and running our elections down here. They skip over chain of custody like, oh, ho hum, no big deal. And they try to, slide these people in. But again, it's because people are stepping up. And like you just talked about, your buddy John Siamas, who's a DOD whistleblower, coming forward and looking at this. I know Chris Gleason has taken a real hard look at this. He's done a lot of great work around this subject, and many, many others all over the country. So, Rocky, we're going to keep our ear to the ground and, keep praying for you, because we'd love to see you run shoulder to shoulder and help clean up the mess on aisle 46. Before I let you go, I just want to put your website up on the screen here. This is your website, Rocky4Congress.com, Rocky4Congress.com. Please go to his website, look at what some of the issues are, because he is, taking a good hard look at the economy and many other things. I just got the wheel of death on my computer. So without further ado, I want to just thank you so much, Rocky. Is there anything else you want to sort of pass on before you move on into getting back to the business of the people, which is trying to figure out how we're going to get you in that seat and remove the incumbent who clearly did not deserve to be there?
Well, we think that this is, now that the investigation has begun, they'll subpoena folks to come on up to testify, and we think that this is going to happen relatively quickly. There are a lot of unexpected expenses associated with this. We started a GoFundMe to help me offset the costs of, because during the election, the Republican Party didn't support me at all. No support whatsoever. There you go. There's the GoFundMe, and whatever I can get to be so helpful, because I'm gonna have to go up to DC until they actually swear me in, and I actually get my chair. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting me come on your show and talk about this. I mean,
before I let you go, I want you to comment on some of the stuff you're seeing come out of what President Trump and Elon Musk and the team at Doge have managed to do. If you were to look at, the recent appointments, right? We're still waiting for Kash Patel, right? Once we get Kash in, I think we're really off to the races now. We've got some other key people in there. We've got Robert Kennedy Jr. We've got Tulsi Gabbard. We have Pam Bondi, Pete Hegseth. What's next? I mean, you show up. What are we doing?
Well, I will tell you that I saw the news from Doge this morning that they found another $1.9 trillion that's unaccounted for. And to say you gotta scratch your head is kind of counterintuitive. Where did that money go? Whose pockets did it line? It boggles the mind. But we need to help. We need to support President Trump and his agenda and make sure that we're getting through, because we have such a small margin in the House. Even adding me in and removing Castor, kind of moves 2 votes closer to nirvana. But if they're able to, so once the state of Florida says there's fraud, that opens the floodgates across the country to be able to go and fight their own fraud cases in all of these elections. And that's what people like Chris are waiting for, and John Siamas and folks in the 4 Senate seats and all that. So Peter Tickton is confident that once we get this from Florida, the court system, that this is going to open the floodgates and we're going to be able to fix a lot of this.
Great. Well, Rocky Rochford, we will keep pulling for you. Thank you so much for coming by this afternoon. And, again, God bless you. Keep up the fight. We're going to fight with you. Folks, if you can, please, by all means, just take a screenshot of this GoFundMe link right here. Support election integrity and donate now to Rocky's quest to unseat Kathy Castor, what we just did. We just showed you. I'll just go backwards so you can look at this again. Those 2 dates, right? September 13th and September 9th, an unusual number of absentee ballots was pulled all at once. And if you look on the bottom down here, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but right above these dates, you'll see a couple small little faint ticks. Those are typical days of absentee ballot requests. You never see anything like this. That is screaming fraud, fraud, fraud. So we don't want to let that stand.
for sure. And that was so the 2 days, if you remove those from the 592,000, you still end up with another 150,000 that were spread across the entire election, including Hillsborough County, where there were over 5,000.
Yeah, nuts. Totally nuts. Rocky, thank you so much.
Thank
Rocky
you, ma'am.
for Congress, Rocky #4congress.com if you want to support there. And we'll, keep us posted what's happening. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.